elected leaders could learn a ton by listening to people with disabilities. Go out, try the week without driving, realize all of the stuff you don't know. Get humble for a week and then say, great, I know where I can tap into expertise that can fix all of the barriers I ran into, because the disability community has been fixing those barriers all along. That's where we get to. Montana culture needs to become disability culture in order to work for everybody. Welcome back. We're here with another episode of Growth Rings. And today we're talking about the week without driving. The week this comes out is the week without driving. The week that bridges the end of September to the beginning of October. That's every year when the National Week Without Driving happens. Last year was the first year Montana celebrated the week without driving. You may be asking yourself, what is the week without driving? The week without driving is a way to show policymakers, show the general public, show budget writers, the impact of transportation-related decisions. So we know that in Montana, it is a big state. It is hard to get around this state, especially if you don't have a car. And this is where disability culture and Montana culture start to intersect in an interesting way, because a third of Americans don't have a driver's license, and a large number of those people are people with disabilities. A disability may impact you in a way that directly affects your ability to drive. For example, you're blind or low vision. A disability could impact you in other ways, where maybe you're indirectly not able to drive, like you have been discriminated against at work and you can't afford to drive, or you can work but you don't have enough money to afford to drive. Poverty is incredibly high in the disability community, and so is underemployment. People want to work more, they just can't. And when you don't have a car, it makes it even harder to work. So there are many reasons why people with disabilities are involuntary non-drivers. Now, I'm not talking about like when I would put on my spandex and get out there on my road bike and ride for fitness or ride for fun. And for many years, I commuted by bike to work and ferry. When I lived in Western Washington, I also had to take a ferry. I'm not talking about those people. Those people are choosing to be non-drivers, and that is a choice they're making. But for many, many people with disabilities, that's not a choice. Either their disability impacts them in a fashion that prevents them from driving, or they can't afford to drive. And that's just a reality of life. So what the Week Without Driving does is challenge people who typically do drive to not drive for 1 week, just 1 week. If you are a politician who takes votes about how we should invest in transportation or sidewalks or housing, all of those votes impact transportation. If I live very close to where I work or to lots of work opportunities, the fact that I'm a disabled non-driver or otherwise an involuntary non-driver because of age or because of cost, whatever the reason that I can't drive, if I live close to where I can work, I don't get as impacted by not driving. I can just walk there or roll in my wheelchair or ride my bike. If I am close to where grocery stores are and drugstores are and movie theaters and coffee shops, all the things that one would want to do throughout their day, if I'm living close to those places, me not being a driver isn't as big a deal. That's where disability culture and Montana culture start to interplay, is if we think about people with disabilities who cannot drive, and we try to make our communities inviting and inclusive to those individuals, it's going to work a lot better for everybody, regardless of whether you have a disability. But I don't know about you, but if you think about where are there shops like grocery stores and clothing stores and pharmacies, and where is there housing and where those things are closely located, those are some of the more expensive housing units. It's cheaper to live out of town a little ways where everything is located. It may be cheaper to live in a trailer park, but trailer parks aren't usually located right downtown, convenient to all the jobs and all the recreation opportunities that are available. So if we think about the week without driving and what that can show us, it can start to show us all sorts of ways that our cities are built from the ground up to favor people who can drive. And you may say, well, doesn't everyone drive, or everyone has access to driving? Not everyone does drive. As I said, a third of Americans don't, either because they're too young, too old, they can't afford it, or they have a disability that gets in their way. So not everyone does drive. A third of America is huge. And then we think about why do people drive? People drive because policies are set up in a way that favor driving to a big box store to get a deal on something versus walking to your local shop that can meet your more individualized needs. So it starts to serve out of our community. It pulls us out of a human to human interaction and pushes us into shop at this big place or that big place, go to this location where we'll congregate everything and live separately from that. So our lives are separated from each other because we get in our big steel boxes and we move about. But if you take a week to get around without driving, you start to find, you interact with far more people in a human-to-human interaction. That human-to-human interaction could be on a bus. I think that's what a lot of people start to think about with non-driving. But a vast majority of people in Montana live in communities that are not served by a local bus system. That's just not possible given the economies of scale. So the other human-to-human interactions are asking people for a favor. Can you give me a ride here? Can you give me a ride there? That uses up social capital. That wears people out. You have friends, but your friends start to feel like they're just using me to get around. It's like, no, I enjoy being with you, but in order to be with you and do things with you, you have to drive because I can't. And that changes some of the power dynamics, or it changes the power dynamics in a home. If one person in a relationship has the ability to drive and another person in that relationship does not, then what are the things that the person who doesn't drive pick up at home? Like, well, I'll do more of the in-home chores and the other person will run the errands and pick up the prescriptions and drop the kids off at this or that. So it shapes how our daily lives work. And that's what we ask people to do for 1 week, just 1 week out of the year. See how it would shape your life differently. Would you walk places? Would you ride your bike? Would you ask family and friends for favors to ride from here to there? Would you use an Uber? Not every town, most towns in Montana don't have Uber. And if they do, it's very expensive. Here in Helena, it can cost $20, $30 to go a mile or two to a big box store. And that's just there. And then you got to come back. So if you can't walk there, you likely can't afford to Uber there and Uber back. It's just prohibitively expensive because, again, we don't have the economies of scale that other communities do, where competition might drive down those prices. So you start to see how we would, if you spend a week not driving, how we could start to take small actions that can change the way Montana is set up to work better for people with disabilities and other people who cannot drive. And you might find, you know what, I'd prefer to take a train to get from this town to that town instead of driving, especially in the wintertime. I would prefer to be able to walk to a local coffee shop instead of get in my car and drive for 7 minutes. I'd prefer to be able to stroll around, meet with friends, and not have to plan it, but just sort of impromptu, because we're all out and about in our community getting around by foot or by wheelchair or by bicycle or scooter. So take this week to think about how you could structure your life in a way differently that could get your kids to school, could get to your doctor's appointments, could get to soccer practice, could get to work, and still do all of that without driving a car yourself. I didn't come up with the week without driving. That's for the invention of someone I know well, Anna Zieverts, who is a disabled non-driver herself. She has never been able to drive because she has vision loss to the point that she can't pass the vision test for driving. It wouldn't be safe for her to drive. So she has always been a disabled non-driver from a teen on. And when she lived in big cities like New York, that was not a problem because lots of people walk and can get around and you can get to anything you need. When you live in a more rural area, though, and as she did when she relocated later, and when you have a kid, you have to start thinking, wow, how is my community set up? Not every community is set up so conveniently that at the bottom of the apartment building you live in, you can get a loaf of bread and you can then catch a train or a bus to get to work. No, you've got to start planning out quite a bit of distance in the future. And so in order to promote an understanding of how policy decisions about transportation are impacting involuntary non-drivers, she wrote this book. And she came up with the idea for the Week Without Driving. And I'll leave a link for this book in the description below. But it's called When Driving is Not an Option, Steering Away from Car Dependency. And it's a great book. Again, if I plug something that's reading oriented, you know it's got to be good because I don't waste my time on garbage because reading is so hard for me. I really think, one, it's not super long. You can see it's about a little less than half an inch, and it is well written, gives you a quick deep dive into, wow, there's this whole world of people who don't drive. Now, if you're a non-driver, you know that already. But if you are a driver and you live in America, you just sort of assume the world is built for you, because I do. I drive my truck around and I just assume I'm going to be able to get to places with my truck. And how much complaining is there when people have to pay for parking and when parking is limited and like, oh, I had to walk a block to get in here. Or, you just assume I can pull up, I can do my business, get back in my car or truck and get on with my life. When in reality, that's a very narrow, specific way of interacting with communities that is relatively recent and doesn't work for a large number of people and never will work for that large number of people. So I challenge you to think about how you could re-examine the implicit bias that we all have in this culture of course, it's going to work for cars. But we don't automatically assume, of course, it's going to work for someone who's walking here or using a wheelchair. So I'd like to also show you, this isn't just folks from around the country. This transportation is always one of the big issues that we're having to deal with. And often we think about that as transportation between towns. It can also be transportation within a town, as we've been talking here. So I asked people with disabilities across Montana, tell me what you think drivers in Montana need to know about disabled non-drivers in Montana. You're both Montanans. You both have an equal right to be here and participate. But how is your experience different from the Montanan who has the choice of driving? So here are a number of examples. When you rely on others, a 15-minute trip turns into a 60-minute trip. Life slows down. I have to plan a week in advance when I want to go anywhere. I'm unable to navigate the paratransit system due to age, technology, and disability. It's all well and good if you have a transit system that you can say, oh, we've got a system set up for people with disabilities. But when many people with disabilities age into disability and they're older and they don't know how to use the apps and the phone line doesn't work well for them because it's not picked up and answered properly, you've got age and technology mingling with disability. It's not so much the disabilities getting in the way of accessing the paratransit, but the disability causes the need, but the age and technology barriers prevent the individual from fully benefiting from it. People who don't drive know what the books don't tell transportation engineers. I challenge folks in transportation sectors and in city planning to take this week without driving and learn what the conventional wisdom won't tell you, because there's nothing conventional about your town and any individual person's disability. They all interact differently. So get out there and try using your own systems that you're designing. What needs to be improved? Bike paths need to be incorporated into all highway and street designs. And this is important because now, if you can't drive a motor vehicle, you may be able to get places and get further with electric assist bicycles and scooters. But if there aren't safe ways to do that, then those options and that liberation that comes from greater transportation options is not realized for you, because your community isn't set up for that, set up with very narrow shoulders to cram as many cars through as possible, but not thinking about the other ways of getting around your community. What needs to be improved? Curb cuts need to be square with avenues and streets. So I've seen a lot of communities in Montana have the diagonal curb cuts that come out and try to service both going across this road and this road. So they only have to pour the cement for one curb cut and not two curb cuts. And the problem with that is that very often, if you go out diagonally, now you're in both lanes of traffic. You're not just crossing one, you've got to make sure both are clear and not going to hit you from the side as you're trying to go parallel to the flow of the major traffic. What needs to be improved? Paratransit needs to be expanded. What needs to be improved? Bus systems need to be more flexible. What needs to be improved? More bathrooms, seats, and trash cans. If you're out living a human-sized existence, walking along the roads to get from this shop to that shop, to this doctor's appointment, to that school event, then you're going to need a place to sit down and take a break. You're going to need a place to go to the bathroom. You're going to need a trash can to throw away your water bottle that you got because it got a lot hotter than you expected today, so you picked one up on your route. Those are all things that if you're driving, you think, well, I'll just swing by McDonald's and get a Coke, and I've got a cup holders built right here. I don't need a trash can. I'll throw it away when I get home. I don't need a bathroom. I'm only going to be out here for 5 minutes from this place to this place. Whereas for someone else, that could be a 25-minute endeavor to walk between the two settings. What needs to be improved? More ways to access services. If there's only one office you have to go to get a service and it's only open during certain hours, you have to build all your transportation workarounds around when and where those services are available. So that becomes quite a difficult thing to do when there are limits there. That could be half a day, and now you can't work that half a day, or you can't be on kid duty that day. What needs to be improved? Accessible parking spots need to be on level ground. Yeah, you can't just throw an accessible parking spot just anywhere, because when you get out, when someone drives you there and they drop you off, you can't roll down the hill. That's not safe. What needs to be improved? Nicer sidewalks. Yeah, we've got a lot of roots pushing things up, the freeze thaw, shoving sidewalks up, and we often talk about, oh, that's tripping hazard. Well, it can just be it's unusable hazard, because if it's up enough that the wheelchair can't get over it, you're not using it. And so you've got to go out into the street now, and that's very dangerous. What needs to be improved? More protection for pedestrians. Again, just like the bicycle paths, how safe is it for a pedestrian to walk around if traffic going through town is 45 miles an hour and you are shoved right up next to the traffic as your sidewalk? That's not very safe for you to walk long distances on that sidewalk because you're exposed to that traffic. Is there enough space for you to safely get around your community, safely cross streets, or is it basically a highway going through your town and the left side of the town is very distinct from the right side of town, unless you're in a car, in which case it doesn't really matter because you've got a big metal box around you. What needs to be improved? Less dangerous roadways. We just talked about that a bit, but it also goes with the speed that things are going, and as I said before, the width of these roads. Not everything has to be a major feeder road, but if you're worried about moving as many cars as possible, that's immediately what you jump to. We need more functional bus app. That relates a bit to the aging and accessing our transportation options. I missed an appointment because my winter bike ride was dangerously icy and I had to take it slow and was too late to get there. And We know we need to slow down when we are driving cars, and I'll often give myself twice as long to get to work. If it normally takes me 8 to 10 minutes, I'll give myself 25 minutes to get to work so that I'm not rushing. Well, if it normally takes you an hour to get somewhere, what are you to give yourself 2 hours? Where do you find that extra hour in the day? It's one thing to shift 15 minutes here or there. It's an entirely different thing to think you can cram in all of life, even when there are natural, typical, predictable weather patterns that are coming through your town. Your life starts to slow, like the very first slide, slow way down. I get around my community by taking the bus, getting rides from friends, and walking short distances. Is that how you'd get around if you had a week without driving? Would you be able to get everything done if that was the case? Cars need to stop driving in bike lanes. Yeah, just because it's a road doesn't mean the car has primary rights to that. And certainly if there's a lane designated for bikes, cars don't have a primary right to it. I make plans based on whether I can get there by bus. So that then really starts to narrow what you're able to go to, where you're able to go. Does the bus run 24/7? No. Does the bus run 7 days a week? Probably not. Does it run in time for you to go to a movie and get back, or go to a holiday party and get back? Probably not. If there's a special book reading that you wanted to get to down at the local bookshop, but it starts at 7 or 7:30, are you going to be able to get home? Are you even going to be able to get there, or does it stop at the evening commute? So that really starts to limit the things you can do in your community. I often can't keep a job because I can't drive to work. We talked about that at the very beginning, but that puts it in stark realities. You want to give people opportunities to work, but then we separate where we live from where we work sufficiently that you can't get there unless you are a driver, and many people with disabilities cannot drive. We need free transportation services and someone to help navigate those services. If you take this challenge, and I challenge you too, also think about how long will it take you to learn what buses go where. How would you piece this particular trip together? What time would you have to be at the first bus in order for that bus to drop you off in time for the second bus? And what if your appointment, you go to the doctor's appointment and they're 15 minutes late? That's not the end of the world if you're driving, but it might be if you are taking the bus, especially if you don't know how to pick up a different bus route. So figure that out and say, yeah, just going through this, I could see how it'd be helpful to have someone to call to help me navigate and problem solve how to use this system. Only one public service for transportation in my town. If they're late or there are other problems, then I need to hire a driver or a taxi. So again, we've talked about this in some of our other podcasts, that the economies of scale in Montana aren't sufficient to have a significant amount of competition. So if the one player in town can't meet your needs aren't getting met, or it becomes very, very expensive for the next option. I'm new to disability and totally dependent on a care facility and family members to arrange transportation. So not everyone has years to sort this out. That's one of the benefits of the week without driving. See, if you're dropped into the world of disability and you can't drive, maybe it's a temporary disability. You just broke your legs and you can't operate your vehicle right now. Or maybe you are now new to a permanent disability, and what does that learning curve look like? You'd get a good crash course by taking this week without driving challenge. I give my grocery list to my daughter to do the shopping. So not even being able to go out and see what's on sale, what's looking fresh. Oh, maybe I will try to cook some ribs this weekend. I haven't done that in years, but there's a good deal on it. Let me try it. You don't get those opportunities. You live a much smaller life. You are stuck at home when shopping is having to be handed off to other people. It may seem nice for that first week, in the first week without driving. Hey, can you go do my shopping for me? But when you have to process all of your requests through somebody else, you start to realize the social toll that takes on the relationship you have with your family and the limitations it puts on your ability to have autonomy over your life. Biking and walking are my main forms of transportation, and they take longer and require planning. The next time you jump in your car and go somewhere, say, how much longer would this take if I had to ride my bike to get there, do my whatever I'm doing there, and then ride my bike back? And what would I miss out in between? A lot of cars simply don't care about pedestrians and bikers and their rights, so I need to pay close attention. So even if you don't take the challenge, you can take this one to heart and think about when you are passing someone who is walking along the sidewalk or riding their bike, what would it be like for them, and how could I move over, slow down? Yeah, the speed limit is 35. That doesn't mean you have to go 35. If you're passing a bike and it's a little tight, you can slow down. You can literally ride behind them until there is a safe way to pass. You are the one in the larger vehicle that could kill them. So be the adult, slow down, wait, and don't be annoyed. They have just as much right to be there as the person in the Subaru next to you has a right to be there. You don't get annoyed that, oh, I want to go past this person, but they're in the lane next to me. Yeah, you wait till they either, slow down, go behind you, or go ahead of you, and then you move into that lane. You don't just say, I have a right to be in that lane, I'm going to move over there. It's hard to get a ride. Usually it's just to a medical appointment and I have to beg. So as you think about where would you go and how would you get there, for how long could you do that? And how would you save up the social capital you have with people so you get to the most essential things? And this Montanan says they save that goodwill for those very few times they have to get to a medical appointment so that they don't get to go to social events, but at least they can go to medical if they beg. I'm outside the perimeter of where transit goes. I'm in the city limits, and this needs to change. So just because you live in town doesn't mean you're served by transportation. So think about that. Where do you live? Does the bus even come anywhere close to where you live? And how would you go about that week without driving? How does driving impact me? I can't work. We've heard this before in the list of people, because of their disability, can't get or keep a job because they can't drive there. Do I have any stories or knowledge to share of experiences about my experiences for non-drivers? No, I don't have any stories because I barely go anywhere. I only go to places that I can easily get to on a bus route, walking, trail, or sidewalk, or by carpooling. I can't always afford taxis or pay to pay for rides, and there's not always someone available. My tip for a new disabled non-driver is to take your time and be aware of your surroundings. Don't overdo it. My tips for new disabled drivers: learn the bus, get a bike, get used to getting to places slower, wear protective gear, know that cars don't care about you at all. My tip for the new disabled non-driver is to get to know the bus route and to figure out where the trails and sidewalks go. Most of us cannot get to the bus stops, or getting there is too much work. We get exhausted. So even if your town has a bus system, if it's not close enough to get there and accessible enough route to get there, it doesn't really help the person with a disability who doesn't have the stamina to get and stay out in the cold in order to catch the bus. All of these policies are set by people who have no idea what we experience and the challenges that we face with transportation. How many of your transportation boards and how many of your transportation professionals are involuntary non-drivers? I'm not talking about the guy like me who will dress up in spandex and do it for fun or do it for some social cause. I'm talking about people who cannot drive, people who maybe would drive if they could, but that's just not an option. So they're designing and building systems through necessity, not through an academic exercise. Transportation planners and advisors could learn from the perspectives of disabled employees. I used to live a quarter mile from the nearest bus stop and had to walk up a busy street that had no sidewalks to get there. This we heard about earlier. It doesn't really matter if you have a transportation system that uses a bus if you can't get to the bus. I have to schedule what I want and need to do it around other people's schedules. That goes back to that theme of using your social capital and working with other people to get to where you need to go at all times. Not once in a while, not as a fun, hey, let's go together, but as a I need to in order to do what I need to get done. We could teach elected officials about bus route availability, safety, and riders on public transport, and the difficulty of navigation of public transport. Elected leaders could learn a ton by listening to people with disabilities. Go out, try the week without driving, realize all of the stuff you don't know. Get humble for a week and then say, great, I know where I can tap into expertise that can fix all of the barriers I ran into, because the disability community has been fixing those barriers all along. That's where we get to. Montana culture needs to become disability culture in order to work for everybody. I have to have my mom or family take me because the bus system is too difficult and I feel unsafe. When the bus only comes twice a day, it's not compatible with appointments. If it's just designed for commuters, people who are going to work at 9 and leaving the work at 5, and that's a very narrow type of job, if it's only designed for that, then it's not really designed for appointments. It's also not designed for grocery shopping or for picking your kids up at school. It's designed for people who predominantly are working office jobs, and that's just not what most people are doing. Doctors and specialists are 90 miles away, and I have to save for months to afford the travel costs. I have delayed cancer care because of it. Plan ahead, way ahead. So, as you can see, Montanans deal with transportation in a unique way to Montana, in a unique way to each of their individual communities, to each of their individual homes and families. And the better we are at listening to and appreciating the powerful knowledge that people with disabilities can give us, we can build strong communities that have housing close to work and play. We can build strong communities that you can get from Bozeman to Billings without driving. So you can get to specialists, or you can get to events that are happening, or universities without driving in the wintertime. There's so many benefits to having an interconnected community, whether that is your local community in Lewistown or that is the full community of Montana. The more we can move at human sizes and not car sizes, and make that doable, I think we'll find that older folks are able to visit their grandchildren more easily. We'll find that school kids are able to get to college and get to high school easily. We'll be able to have people with disabilities in our workforce contributing to designing our transportation systems and how we build our cities and where we develop housing. All of these things will become much more easy reality when we start tapping into the strength of the disability community. So let's continue to work on making disability culture and Montana culture one. You can start by joining the Week Without Driving. I will put a link to where you can go to sign up and show that you're participating. I also challenge you, share your stories on social media so that your neighbors and coworkers can see what's going on. Tag us so that we can help amplify your message. And once you've learned the world of things you don't know, and if you are a disabled driver, once you're ready to share the world of things you do know, get ready and go to public comment periods, whether it's about housing developments or transportation options in your community or transportation options between towns. There are many different opportunities to help shape our community, and you getting comfortable telling your story, you getting comfortable explaining how being a disabled non-driver gives you specific, unique insight into how we can fix these problems. The better you get at that, the better our communities will be for it, because we'll be learning from your experiences. And if you're not really comfortable doing that yet, that's fine. We've got some podcasts coming up that will help you learn the skills that you need to go to a local city council meeting, or go to a transportation authority meeting, or even come to Helena and tell your story in front of legislators. So I hope that you will continue to watch these videos, continue to be engaged, and continue to shape Montana so it works well, not just for the disability community, but for all of us. And we'll get there by listening to the disability community and the ways that they have been fixing the community all along. We can scale up the solutions that the disability community has been developing for themselves and provide them to all Montanans. So until next time, thank you, and I hope you can participate in this year's Week Without Driving. Thanks. Hey, this is a perfect time to subscribe to the podcast. Just click below, and you'll get notified when we have new updates. Thanks.